welcome back to episode 7 of... Wait, what series are we on? Guys, I forgot what series we're on. We're on series 8. Let me start this again, guys. Welcome back to series 8, episode 7 of What If. I don't know what happened to my brain then. Sometimes I just forget like the season names, or someone will be like, what season are you filming right now? And I'm like, I don't know. And I don't know why these things leave my brain.
We've done so many seasons now as well that I'm literally having to guess when I'm like doing the research for this. I'm like, what season are we on? Are we on 7, 8, 10? Like, we've just done too many now.
No, literally. Or like, I'll for a second convince myself that we're like back doing Debunked, and I'll start like trying to look into like conspiracy theories and things, and I'm like, oh my god, no, we're on What If. This is not a conspiracy theory series. I do it literally all the time. Anyway, guys, if you haven't checked out our brand new website already, you absolutely need to go and check it out. It is www.socultured.com. And the reason I say this, because if you are watching, you will see that I am... Let me move my mic temporarily.
Liv is wearing the So Cultured podcast hoodie, now in pink, because obviously previously we've only ever had it in light blue. So I'm not going to lie, I think the baby pink is my fave.
The baby pink is definitely my fave. And I also feel like it's everyone's favorite, because I think literally all of the hoodie orders that we have all been for this pink color. So yeah. Anyway, I just kind of jumped the gun there, but was going to say, yeah, we obviously have brand new merch, and it is available on our website. We have this cute hoodie, as Taz just said, in pink and blue. We have our So Cultured t-shirt, which you guys have definitely seen us wear before, and then we've also got our So Cultured mug and stickers. Side note, why am I not using my So Cultured mug right now?
I always keep mine on my office desk, so mine is always at work, like repping So Cultured whilst I'm at work. And it's also appropriate because it's like in the lab, you know.
In the lab.
So I want to see everybody's merch like in the lab, out and about with you. So if you have got merch, or you're planning on wearing merch or buying merch, then please tag us in your pictures. We've had a few people tag us recently, and we absolutely love seeing it. So yeah,
no, I absolutely love seeing it. It just makes me so happy. So yeah, if you guys pick anything up, then make sure you tag us on Instagram or TikTok at So Cultured Podcast, because we absolutely love to see it. But with that being said, let's get into today's episode of What If. Welcome to the So Cultured Podcast,
where we explore science and tech unfiltered.
We're your hosts, Liv and Taz, two girls who love STEM and spilling the tea.
Each season, we take on a new theme, whether it's busting conspiracy theories, celebrating women in STEM, or breaking down the science in your favourite sci-fi films.
And of course, in every episode, we spill the laboratory,
where we share your wildest stories from the world of science.
Let's get into this week's episode of So Cultured.
What if bacteria are controlling us? Microbes are literally everywhere. They live on your phone, in your water bottle, on your skin, in the air around you, and on nearly every surface you touch. Even after you wash your hands, thousands of microscopic organisms can remain behind. And at every moment of your life, entire ecosystems of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microorganisms are living on your body and deep inside it. Now, for most of human history, we viewed these organisms in relatively simple terms. Some microbes were dangerous and caused disease, while others were thought to be mostly harmless passengers, tiny hitchhikers using our bodies for shelter and food. But over the last few decades, scientists have begun uncovering a much more complicated picture. The trillions of microorganisms living inside us may not simply help us survive. Increasingly, evidence suggests that they may also influence how we think, how we feel, what we crave, how we respond to stress, and perhaps even control aspects of our behavior itself. Researchers are now asking difficult questions. Could microbes influence our mood? Could they shape our motivations or eating habits? Could they subtly affect decision-making, social behavior, or mental health? And if so, where exactly does human behavior end and microbial influence begin?
Oh my god, this is really interesting. I love this topic. I've never really thought about this whole idea much before you started working in kind of like the microbiome space. So tell us, what this is and like how exactly does the microbiome work, because we've definitely touched on it a few times on the podcast, but it's really exciting that we're now doing like a proper episode on it, because I feel like I've had actually a lot of interesting conversations recently around the microbiome.
Yeah, honestly, like, I hate to kind of say it, but before I came into this space myself, I really saw like gut health as quite a, I don't know, a bit of like a wellness fad. And it was just like a buzzword that people kept throwing around. Everyone was like linking it back to your gut health, but like since being in the space, I've been like, okay, no, actually, maybe they're onto something here. Like, I've literally done experiments where I've basically proven those things to be right. So yeah, it's kind of crazy, and it's really kind of an up and coming area of research as well.
Yeah.
If we get into the microbiome, so basically, alongside human cells that make up your body live trillions of microscopic organisms. These include bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea, and they're collectively known as the microbiome. And one of the largest and most important microbial ecosystems in the body exists inside the gut, where enormous communities of microorganisms help perform functions essential for human life. So for years, people commonly repeated the idea that microbial cells outnumber human cells by 10 to 1, but actually more recent estimates suggest that the ratio is probably much closer to equal. But regardless of the exact number, the conclusion remains kind of remarkable that the human body is not purely human. And one idea I find particularly funny is that every time you go to the toilet, aka and the number 2, you are essentially tipping the ratio to more human than bacteria.
Oh my God. Like, are we even human, or are we just half human, half bacteria? Well, after you've been to the loo.
That's essentially what this is saying, right?
What
so
the
I think
hell?
we've got like something 30 trillion human cells, and then there's like 38 trillion bacterial cells. So it's pretty much equal.
Oh my God. No, we're not even human. We're just bacteria.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Existential crisis pending.
But obviously inside the intestines alone, actually, there might be up to 1,000 different species of bacteria carrying out loads of different tasks. So some help digest food and break down fibers that human enzymes can't usually process on their own. Others can produce compounds and vitamins. They can regulate inflammation or even help train the immune system to distinguish between harmless substances and dangerous pathogens. So scientists have become increasingly interested in another possibility, that some of these microbes may actually influence the brain. Now, this relationship between humans and microbes is ancient. So microorganisms existed long before humans evolved, and over millions of years, we developed alongside them in a tightly interconnected partnership. And a neuroscientist, 𝗀𝘃𝗀𝗀, has pointed out that there actually has never been a time when the human brain existed without microbial signals. So humans provide microbes with a shelter, the nutrients, and a stable environment to live in. But in return, many of these organisms help maintain functions that are critical for survival. But the deeper that scientists actually look into this relationship, the more complex that it appears. So rather than passive passengers simply living inside of us, microbes may be active participants in shaping the internal environment of the body, including potentially the brain itself.
That is so interesting. I did not know that. Because, like, obviously you just said about how microbes have been around since kind of like before human evolution, and that I guess like the human brain hasn't existed ever without microbial signals, which is just crazy to think about. But then my question is like, where do we individually first encounter microbes, if you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. I'd never really thought about the fact that we've kind of never existed in like a germ free world, like a microbial free world. So we don't actually know what it is like as humans to like not be coming into contact with microbes all the time. But for us individually, the human microbiome likely begins at birth, although scientists are still kind of debating whether the microbial exposure might begin even earlier. So for decades, the kind of main view was that babies develop inside a completely sterile environment in the womb, only encountering microbes for the first time during delivery. But more recently, researchers have identified traces of bacterial DNA in the placenta, amniotic fluid, and the meconium, which is a baby's first stool. Some scientists believe that this may suggest microbial exposure begins before birth, but then others actually argue that these findings could be a result of contamination during sampling and analysis. So that debate is kind of ongoing, and researchers don't necessarily fully agree. But what scientists do agree is that on the first major microbial colonization, and that happens during and immediately after birth. So as the baby passes through the birth canal, it is exposed to a large community of microbes from its mother, and this transfer appears to play a really important role in the development of the immune system and the long-term kind of makeup of the microbiome. Now, researchers have actually found that babies born via cesarean section often develop somewhat different microbial communities compared to those born vaginally, and some studies have linked these differences with increased rates of asthma, allergies, and autoimmune conditions, because obviously some microbes act to regulate your immune system. They have immunoregulatory functions. And then obviously after birth, the microbiome rapidly expands and diversifies. So microbes arrive from skin contact, breast milk, family members, pets, food, soil, air, and the surrounding environment. But mother's milk actually appears especially adapted to support this whole process because it contains really complex sugars that babies cannot digest on their own, but which beneficial gut microbes can use as food. So in effect, part of the breast milk seems designed specifically to nourish the infant microbiome. It can actually take around 2 years for a relatively stable microbial community to form, and even then, microbiome continues to change throughout life because obviously things like diet, medication, stress, sleep, exercise, where you live and your environment, and even your social interactions can obviously influence what microbes thrive inside of us. So for example, children raised in environments surrounded by animals, like in a rural environment, they're surrounded by animals, soil, they generally have greater microbial diversity compared with children raised in usually more sanitized urban settings. So this has actually contributed to the so-called hygiene hypothesis, which is the idea that reduced microbial exposure in early life may increase the risk of allergies, asthma, and autoimmune disease because the immune system doesn't receive the microbial stimulation it evolved to expect.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's so interesting. It's like kind of one of those theories that you have heard about and I think people talk about, but this is kind of like actually brings some scientific back into it, which I think is really cool. But I can't help but think about what you were saying about the brain, because I feel like a lot of people are talking now about how, as you said earlier, bacteria or like your microbiome can affect or interact, I guess, with your brain. And I'm just dying to talk about that because I feel like it's such a hot topic. But because it's such a hot topic, it makes me think about like how new is this research? Because it seems quite cutting edge and, like I said, kind of like the talk of this whole research field at the moment.
100%. I mean, what we call this connection is the gut-brain axis. And whilst there's still a lot we don't know, and like you say, it is very like cutting edge, kind of novel, the idea that the gut and the brain communicate with one another is actually not a recent discovery. And in fact, some of the earliest clues emerged nearly 2 centuries ago through one of the strangest medical cases in history. So in 1822, there was a young fur trader named Alexis St. Martin, and he was accidentally shot in the abdomen at close range when a musket-type gun discharged beside him. Now, this injury was catastrophic. So part of his stomach and lung tissue protruded through the wound, and survival initially seemed pretty unlikely. But then an army surgeon named William Beaumont managed to save Alexis's life, but he could not fully repair the damage. So Alexis was actually left with a permanent opening known as a fistula directly into his stomach. Now, William Beaumont realized that this unusual injury provided a rare opportunity to observe human digestion in real time. Over several years, he conducted numerous experiments by studying Alexis's stomach contents and digestive activity. And so among William's most important observations was that digestion appeared closely linked to emotional state. So stress, anger, and emotional distress altered the stomach's activity and digestive secretion. So anger and irritability, he found, actually slowed digestion. So although William Beaumont could not have understood the microbiome or neuroscience as we know them today, his observations helped establish one of the earliest foundations for what scientists now call the gut-brain axis, which is the bidirectional communication between the central nervous system and the gastrointestinal tract. And today, researchers understand that this communication occurs through multiple pathways simultaneously. So you've got the nervous system, the immune system, hormones, and microbial metabolites, as they all appear to play a role. So rather than operating independently, the gut and the brain are kind of in a constant communication, continuously exchanging information about the body's internal state.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like when you really think about it, it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Like, it makes so much sense that, like, something like your stress levels or how you're feeling in your emotional state would affect, like, basic bodily processes. Like, it sounds crazy, but when you really think about it, it's not that crazy. Do you know what I mean? But I don't really get, like, how bacteria are actually involved in that process.
Yeah, so the human gut is actually more than just a digestive organ. So embedded within it is an enormous network of neurons, often referred to as the enteric nervous system, sometimes actually nicknamed the body's second brain. Millions of nerve cells line the digestive tract and constantly communicate with the central nervous system. So one of the most important communication pathways is the vagus nerve, which is a major nerve connecting the brain to organs throughout the body, including the gut. And researchers often describe it as kind of a biological information highway, carrying signals back and forth between the digestive system and the brain. Scientists now believe that certain gut microbes may actually influence this communication. So many bacteria produce chemicals capable of interacting with the nervous system. One of the most important is serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter heavily involved in mood regulation, emotional processing, and communication between nerve cells. And actually, around 90 to 95% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut, which I actually didn't know. So I thought that was super interesting. But this serotonin that's produced in the gut doesn't really directly cross into the brain, but it may still influence brain function indirectly through signaling pathways involving the nervous system and the immune system. And other microbes produce compounds known as short-chain fatty acids when they break down dietary fiber. And one of these compounds is called butyrate, and it's attracted particular interest because of its apparent role in reducing inflammation and supporting brain health. And researchers have also discovered that microbes can influence the immune system in ways that affect the brain. So some bacterial signals stimulate immune cells in the gut, triggering chemical messages that then circulate through the body and alter activity in the brain itself. And studies have linked the microbiome and conditions including epilepsy, depression, and neurodevelopment disorders.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy how it's linked to all of those things. I didn't know that. Have there actually been any experiments which look into like bacteria changing behavior? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Obviously, if we go back to like my comment about living in a germ-free world, like we've never not reacted with microbes before, we can actually simulate that in like a animal model, and that is basically because researchers can manipulate the microbiome far more directly than would ever be possible in humans, where there's already an established diverse microbiome. One of the most important discoveries actually came from experiments involving germ-free mice. And so that's animals, or mice in this case, raised in completely sterile environments without any microbiome at all. So researchers actually noticed that these mice behaved very differently from normal mice. They tended to be more anxious, less social, more hyperactive, and more prone to what they referred to as risky behavior. And they also performed worse on like learning and memory tasks. And other animals showed similar effects. So in zebrafish, disrupting the microbiome with antibiotics reduce their normal shoaling behavior, whilst probiotics appeared to increase it. And then researchers then began testing whether microbes associated with specific behaviors could actually transfer those behaviors to other animals. So in one experiment, healthy rats received gut microbes from humans suffering from depression. And so after this transfer, the rats began displaying behaviors associated with anxiety and depression themselves. And this was associated with decreased gut microbiota richness and diversity. There was also another study that explored the connection between microbes, motivation, and exercise. So scientists observed that some mice were highly motivated to run on exercise wheels, whilst others remained relatively sedentary despite being genetically identical mice. And the key difference actually appeared to lie in their microbiomes. So the more active mice hosted bacteria that produce chemicals stimulating reward pathways in the brain, and exercise triggered a kind of chemical reward response, something resembling like a runner's high, and the less active mice did not experience the same effect. So then the researchers then transplanted the microbes from the active mice into the sedentary mice, and remarkably, the previously inactive mice became more motivated to exercise, which is wild to think, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like made up. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, is that legit? Like, it sounds made up. I think it's really interesting how you can take it from humans and then put it into mice and it has the same effect, because that suggests like a very kind of like basic biological pathway. When I say it must follow a very basic biological pathway to be having the same effect in humans and mice. But I guess that might relate back to what you said about how the gut could be linked to, for example, like the production of serotonin. So it could be something as basic as like the production of certain neurotransmitters and stuff. It's all very 100%. Interesting.
I think it's related to bacteria producing certain chemicals that can then have like a whole body effect.
Have they done any testing in humans? Because obviously we just spoke about mice studies, but have they actually done anything in humans?
Yeah, so I think over the last decade, researchers have actually identified differences between the gut microbiomes of people with depression and those without depression. And there was a major study published in 2019 that found that bacteria, including 𝗾𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗋𝑏acterium and 𝗾𝘂𝗃𝑔𝑒𝑚, were consistently associated with higher reported quality of life, whilst reductions in these specific bacteria were actually linked with depression. And at the same time, scientists kind of try and, like you say, Liv, careful not to overstate these findings. It's kind of still difficult to determine whether these microbial changes contribute to depression or whether depression itself changes eating habits, then sleep, then stress levels, and then daily behavior in ways that then alter the microbiome. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, like don't really know what comes first kind of things. But even so, experimental evidence is beginning to suggest that there might be at least a causal relationship. So in one placebo-controlled study conducted at Oxford University, researchers gave participants with mild to moderate depression either a placebo or a probiotic containing 14 bacterial species over a 4-week period. And they found that participants taking the probiotic reported measurable improvements in mood compared with the placebo group. So what they found was that the changes weren't super dramatic, but they were statistically significant, and it did seem to have some effect. And researchers have actually begun referring to these kinds of microbial interventions as psychobiotics, which are treatments involving beneficial bacteria or substances that support them with the goal of improving mental health. And scientists are now exploring whether psychobiotics might one day complement existing treatments for depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and psychosis. Obviously, I have to reiterate that the effects they've observed so far are relatively modest, and that's kind of why it's suggesting to be used as a treatment alongside other treatments.
That's interesting. Or maybe not even, I wonder if they've considered the use of it as kind of like a supplement. You know, obviously we take, for example, like your vitamin C tablets, or just to like help with overall wellness. So I wonder if this is also something that could potentially be brought in. So rather than using it as like a treatment, you would use it as like a daily supplement or something like that, especially if the effects are like minimal but statistically significant.
Yeah, this is essentially my entire like work that I'm currently doing at the moment. So I'm looking at making supplements that promote the growth of certain bacteria in the gut to reduce inflammation in lung diseases. So like asthma and COPD. It will kind of be like a supplement that you can take that is going to reduce asthma attacks or hospitalizations, because it kind of modulates your immune system. And usually when you have an asthma attack or you have a COPD exacerbation, it's because your immune system kind of like gets out of control, whereas these bacteria in your gut, they modulate it and regulate it and stop it from like going wildly out of control. It's not like a cure, but it could prevent things from getting worse or like exacerbations happening. So you're kind of spot on with what you said.
Gosh, I'm so clever. Oh no, it's a really, really interesting field of science, and I feel like it's going to grow a lot in the next few years as well, which is really exciting. But it is making me think of, if any of our listeners listen to our episode, what if all the insects disappeared? Or maybe they listened to our cicadas episode, which I cannot even remember what series that was in now. Do you know what it's making me think of? You remember how we spoke about like the zombie ants or the zombie cicadas, which are like, they're like mind controlled by a type of fungus. This is kind of making me think like, well, if that can happen in nature, then who's to say that this isn't also happening to us, but just on a less intense scale? Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously we're not zombies being controlled by them, but like, do you know what I mean?
There's bacteria and obviously fungi that do this at an extreme scale, and we've covered it in the past, and that's actually a really good point, and actually probably one of the most like dramatic examples of microorganisms influencing animal behavior, not necessarily insect, comes not from a bacteria or fungi, but from a parasite known as 𝗾𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗯𝗯. You might have heard of this having cats yourself, but if not,
I have heard of this.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So it's a microscopic parasite, and it affects a wide range of animals around the world, and it's evolved a really extraordinary survival strategy. So toxoplasma can only reproduce sexually inside cats, and obviously you're a cat owner yourself, meaning its life cycle depends on somehow reaching a feline host. And to achieve this, the parasite appears capable of altering the behavior of infected animals. So, as an example, infected rats and mice, they are influenced by the parasite to lose much of their instinctive fear of cats. So normally rodents avoid the smell of cat urine, but infected animals become unusually fearless and in some cases may even appear attracted to it.
That's
and
crazy.
This obviously dramatically increases the likelihood that they'll be eaten by a cat, allowing the parasite to return to its preferred host. And similar behavioral effects have been observed in other species. So in Yellowstone National Park, wolves infected with toxoplasma appear more likely to leave their packs, attempt to become dominant leaders, and engaged in risky behavior. And so researchers have also investigated possible effects in humans. So it's actually estimated, and I had to like triple check this figure because I was like, surely not. But it's estimated that around 30%, so 1/3 of the global population, may carry this parasite.
I knew about this because I do know about toxoplasma, and I did know this. But I only found out about it, I want to say like 2 years ago. And I was like, I've been a cat owner my whole life. I've never heard of this until like 2 years ago. And it's really serious.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I was shocked.
I've definitely heard of it, and I've seen videos of mice that seem to like play with cats and stuff and not run away, and all the comments are like, it's toxoplasma. But
Yeah.
I didn't know that much of the human population was also infected with it.
Yeah.
And I actually looked it up. 50% of Australians are infected.
Oh my gosh. It'd be 100% of you soon.
What, like, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
But anyway, linking this to human behavior, there's some kind of maybe more controversial studies that have suggested associations between toxoplasma infection and increased risk-taking behavior, which actually included a greater likelihood of entrepreneurial activity, which I think is quite funny. It's like all these big businessmen and like they're just like infected with toxoplasma.
That's interesting. I mean, it kind of relates back to what you said about the wolves. Like you said, the wolves become like more like dominated. That is giving like zombie on a small scale. Like it's some kind of
exactly
weird
behavior.
Like,
obviously we can't obviously none of this actually proves that the parasites are secretly controlling human behavior. And like obviously a lot of scientists kind of urge caution when interpreting those kind of findings. But yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Human behavior is a lot more complex than like cats and rats, like you said. But nevertheless, it really demonstrates a really important principle, and that is that microorganisms are capable, at least in some cases, of influencing the behavior of their hosts in ways that improve the microorganisms' survival. And this possibility has led researchers, and now us, I guess, to ask kind of broader and more unsettling questions that if parasites can manipulate behavior, could other microorganisms subtly influence human thoughts, emotions, or decision making as well?
Yeah, that is actually all so cool. And anyway, speaking of cats, my cat has come back. If you're watching, you'll know that like for half the episode she was asleep on me and I felt like I couldn't move. I've had pins and needles this whole episode, and now she's back to give me pins and needles again. But yeah, it's definitely just so interesting, and I feel like I want to go and read more about it. I feel like there's so many aspects of this whole field that are so interesting. Yeah, obviously we spoke about diet. Can we touch a little bit more on that? Because I do think that's a really interesting aspect of this whole thing.
This is like pretty appropriate because obviously every species of microbe living in the gut depends on nutrients for survival, and actually different microbes thrive on different foods. So some really flourish on fiber-rich vegetables and plant-based foods, whilst others are better adapted to diets high in sugar, fat, and processed carbohydrates. And because microbes depend so heavily on what their hosts eat, some scientists have actually proposed that they may have evolved ways to influence eating behavior itself, like of the human that they're colonizing. So experiments involving fruit flies and rodents suggest that microbiome can alter food preferences and cravings. So the theory is relatively simple. Microbes that benefit from particular nutrients may produce chemical signals encouraging their hosts to seek more of those foods, helping the microbes survive and multiply. And although evidence in humans is still kind of developing, researchers believe a similar feedback loops exist in people as well. So, for example, periods of chronic stress often lead individuals to consume more calorie-dense comfort foods, and microbes that thrive off sugary or fatty foods may then expand within the gut microbiome, potentially reinforcing cravings for the same foods through interactions with the nervous system and the reward pathways in the brain. And over time, this could create self-reinforcing cycles in which dietary habits and microbial populations continuously shape one another. And researchers sometimes compare the gut microbiome to a garden. So whatever nutrients we are consistently providing will encourage certain organisms to grow whilst like suppressing others.
Mm-hmm.
And the microbiome may also influence how efficiently the body extracts calories from foods. So, scientists involving mice found that transferring microbes from obese animals into lean animals caused the lean mice to gain more body fat despite eating similar diets. And this suggests that the microbiome may contribute not only to food cravings, but to metabolism itself as well. And on top of this, we've also observed effects of the microbiome through fecal microbiota transplantation, which is commonly known as a fecal transplant. And this procedure essentially involves transferring microbes from the stool of a healthy donor into the gut of another person in order to kind of restore a microbial balance. And although this concept kind of sounds unusual, fecal transplants have already proven highly effective in treating dangerous Clostridium difficile infections, which usually occur when antibiotics disrupt the normal microbiome and then allow C. difficile to like take over, and it can be pretty damaging. But researchers have actually observed, and obviously this is just observational, but they've observed unexpected side effects that hint at kind of the broader influence microbes may have over human biology. So there's one really widely discussed case, which was a woman who received fecal transplant from an overweight donor, later developed obesity herself. And obviously this is just a single case, so it can't really prove causation, but it did prompt researchers to investigate whether certain metabolic traits might be partially transferable through microbial communities. And other studies found that transferring microbes from lean donors into obese individuals increased microbial diversity and improved insulin sensitivity, which both are kind of associated with improved metabolic health. So obviously these findings are pretty early, and in some cases like completely observational, but they do suggest that metabolism, weight regulation, and perhaps aspects of behavior may be influenced not just by human genetics, but also by the microbial ecosystems living inside the body.
Oh, that's a lot. There's so many different angles that play into this. I feel that it must be really, really hard if you're working in this field to figure out cause and effect and know what's affecting what, how it's affecting it. Yeah, it's all just, I imagine, very confusing and difficult.
I think this is
apart.
why it's so hard I think that's why it's so hard to study this in humans. Like obviously an animal study, you can control so many aspects of it so that you kind of can pinpoint what is causing what, whereas humans, there's just so many factors. Like you can't even control what someone's eating, and that has the biggest effect on the microbiome. So like it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was thinking though, because you mentioned obviously antibiotics, what effect does that actually have, like if you're essentially stripping yourselves of like your bacterial microbiome?
Yeah, this is really important point and interesting point actually, because obviously antibiotics, they're among one of like the most important medical discoveries, but they've only been discovered fairly recently in human history. They can actually dramatically alter the microbiome by killing beneficial bacteria alongside obviously the harmful pathogens, and researchers have begun investigating whether these disruptions might have longer term effects beyond just digestion alone. So one large study following more than 14,000 women found that participants who had used antibiotics for extended periods performed slightly worse on cognitive tests years later, particularly in areas involving learning, attention, and working memory. And the findings were relatively subtle and kind of remain correlational, meaning they don't necessarily prove antibiotics directly cause this cognitive decline, because obviously many other factors could contribute. But the results have obviously raised important questions about whether altering the microbiome over long periods might affect brain function in ways that scientists are only now beginning to understand.
But that is difficult, because if someone has been on antibiotics for like a long period of time, you'd assume they've been obviously sick for long periods of time, which means that they might have spent time outside of like education or, you know, just away from like learning environments or more like mentally stimulating environments. So like this is what I'm saying, it's so hard to tease all of those things apart.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think because it said women, I reckon it's a case of women who get constant UTI and are always on antibiotics for urinary tract infections, which like you don't hospitalize, like nothing like that, but you do constantly go on antibiotics because there are women out there who suffer from UTIs constantly.
Yeah.
And so that would be like more of a good scenario to look at, I guess.
I mean, if you've ever had a UTI, they do like, and this is not even me making a joke, like they genuinely send you crazy if you've ever had like a really bad one. So
I've never had a UTI.
have you not?
I
Oh
must
my
have
God.
a really long urethra.
Yeah, literally. I always say this. I'm like, whenever I'm sorry,
Well,
that's
you're quite short and I'm quite tall, so maybe that's why.
That is such a niche thing to say, but I totally get it. Like, that's so funny. Yeah, whenever someone tells me that, I'm like, oh, hun, you must have a short urethra. And they look at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's so funny that you said that.
Yeah, no, I've always thought it because I have loads of friends that have had UTIs, and I'm like,
Short
I
urethra
genuinely have
club.
never had one. Like, touch wood.
No, they are awful. Like, yeah, they are the worst. You genuinely cannot focus on anything.
I mean, this is the thing, like, it is really hard to kind of do these association studies because you just don't really know all the external factors, but you would kind of hope that they try and control for that. But yeah, how much they can control for that, I don't know. But obviously, we've discussed before, even with like germ-free mice or zebrafish put on antibiotics, they kind of show patterns of kind of cognitive disruption. I mean, I know from my own work that antibiotics can disrupt the bacterial species that regulate the immune system, and that can actually exacerbate and worsen chronic inflammatory conditions. It definitely has an effect. So yeah.
Other than using antibiotics, is there any way that the human body controls the bacteria? Like, can we control bacteria, or is it just the other way around?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you have to think about like your immune system, and obviously there's a bit of regulation there. I mean, in the gut it's dampened, but actually until recently we kind of focused solely on the effects of microbes and what effects they're having on us. But scientists at Harvard Medical School and Brigham and Women's Hospital discovered that cells lining the gut produce tiny molecules called microRNAs, and they are basically small strands of genetic material capable of regulating biological processes. So what researchers found was that these microRNAs were released into the gut, and they were capable of influencing bacterial growth directly. So mice lacking certain gut microRNAs developed disrupted microbial communities and became more vulnerable to inflammatory bowel disease. But when researchers restored the missing microRNAs, the microbiome shifted back towards a healthier state. So these microRNAs seem really essential to kind of keep the gut community in check and in a way that's beneficial for us and not like an inflammatory state. And in another experiment, scientists introduced specific synthetic microRNAs into mice and successfully increased the growth of particular beneficial bacterial species. So the findings suggest that communication between humans and microbes may operate in both directions.
Yeah, that is very cool. I mean, you did say at the start of this episode it was a bi-directional communication, so I would expect that they would influence each other anyway in so many ways.
Yeah.
But to kind of like my last question, obviously we spoke about like antibiotics. I mean, we spoke about so many things on this episode, but is there anything else in our life or like modern life, I guess, that can affect the human microbiome?
Yeah. I mean, modern life is definitely reshaping the human microbiome in ways unlike anything experienced during most of human evolution. So for exact reasons, like you said, antibiotics. Alongside that, we've got high processed diets, excessive sanitation, reduced exposure to natural environments, chronic stress, probably disrupted sleep patterns, and they are all things that can alter microbial diversity. Me personally, I also think consumption of plastic must also be having an effect, and I think that's going to be an area of research that is going to absolutely boom in the future, because I think personally it's going to be having an effect on us. What that effect is, I don't know, but I reckon it's definitely affecting our microbiome. So
yeah,
but that's just my personal opinion and where I see research going. Also, research has shown that significant dietary shifts can reshape microbial populations within days. So you've got diets rich in fiber, vegetables, and fermented foods tend to support greater microbial diversity, and then heavily processed diets, which are kind of what we are probably consuming a lot these days, they reduce bacterial diversity. But I think it's important to end on the fact that the microbiome is so complex. There's a lot we don't understand about it, and there's no like single food or supplement that can magically optimize mental and physical health. But many researchers believe that supporting microbial diversity through diet and lifestyle might become an increasingly important part in preventative medicine. And the emerging idea is not that microbes replaced traditional medical treatments, but that maintaining a healthy microbiome might help support broader physical and mental well-being.
Yeah, it's also interesting. Like I said, I just feel like there's so many things that come into it. But yeah, the one about plastics is definitely interesting. Like, especially I've seen a lot of people talking about like which cutting boards you use. I think we should do an episode on like microplastics and the research behind that, because I think there's so much research and so much science to discuss. It is. So yeah, we should definitely do an episode on that at some point.
Yeah, I agree. So the next time you're experiencing a craving, feeling stressed, lose motivation, or suddenly feel energized, it is worth remembering that something else may be influencing those things just as much as you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Taz. That was really interesting. I absolutely loved that episode, and I feel like it always makes for a more interesting and insightful episode when it is one of either of ours like research topic that we actually work in or like have researched before. So interesting. Thank you so much. But with that, I think it's time we move on to our laboratory section of today's episode. But I'm worth it, 'cause I'll slip into your dreams tonight. This episode is sponsored by Cite, the smart citation tool for your everyday research needs. Taz, I don't know about you, but I think Cite really sets itself apart from other citation and reference tools.
Yeah, I feel the same. With Cite, not only do you have access to over 250 million papers, but it can summarize a paper into a report, format citations, and more.
Yeah, and not only that, but I also love that you can connect it to tools like ChatGPT, Claude, or Copilot, and it basically just upgrades how those tools actually handle research.
Yeah, so instead of getting a general answer, your AI is actually searching through a huge database of research papers. And the key thing is it's not just looking at the titles or abstracts, it's searching inside the full text.
Honestly, it's such a slay because it just makes such a big difference, because a lot of important details don't really show up in abstracts, and I feel like most tools just miss that completely.
On top of that is the smart citations feature, which I think is one of the most useful features, because it doesn't just show how many times a paper's been cited, it also shows how it's been cited.
Yeah, you can see whether other researchers have supported the findings, contradicted them, or whether they've just mentioned them. So it gives you a much clearer picture of what other experts in the field feel about it.
It also helps with access. So if a paper is available to you, Cite will help you get the full text.
So if you want to try it, you can head to cite.ai, or you can find the link in today's episode or video description. Setup only takes a minute, and you can use the code on screen now for money off. And thank you so much to Cite for sponsoring today's episode. But for now, let's get back into it. Okay, so over on Instagram, we have asked you guys to give us your hottest takes in science, tech, or academia, and we are going to peer review your take. So we will either give it minor revisions, major revisions, or completely reject your hot take. And I love this week's hot takes because we got some stupid ones. I'm not gonna lie.
I love a stupid hot take. That's why they're called hot takes, right?
Well, you say that, but the last time we did it a few episodes ago, we actually agreed with every single hot take. So I'm intrigued to see what we're going to think of this week's one. So let's get straight into it. So our first hot take is, it is fine to put minimal effort into peer review because nobody pays us to do it. I'm scared to answer this one. Like, I'm scared to say my thoughts on this.
Yeah, same. That's low-key us just agreeing then, isn't it?
I was about to say, low-key, do we agree with it then? Do you know what? Like, I do think it's absolutely mental that we're not paid to do it. But also, like, I'm expected to do it. Honestly, my previous supervisors, which I did appreciate them doing this because experience and all that. And I know the reasons they were doing it were genuine. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's also this huge thing where PIs will just give their students their peer, like they'll get invited to peer review a paper and they just give it to their students.
They get all the brownie points and they're like, this is really good experience for you to do. And it's just like, it is, and it was the first 3 times you gave this for me to do. But now on the 10th time, I'm like, no, babes.
I hate reviewing papers. I can't lie. Unless it's a really rubbish paper that's really easy to just tear apart, because you do have papers like that.
That is quite fun, like tearing a paper apart, which makes us sound really evil, but it is quite fun.
Listen, some of them are like, babes. Some of them are so badly done that it's deserved. Like, I'm never that harsh unless a paper is like genuinely really awful, and like it's like I genuinely am just surprised that it's even being considered sometimes.
The only other time I like reviewing a paper is when it's in like my field of research and I'm seeing like pre-published stuff and I'm nosy as to what they're doing, and I'm like, either like, fuck, I was doing that, or this is really interesting, I'm gonna like work on this and advance this.
Little scoop, a cheeky little scoop.
I know.
What do you think of the take though? Is it okay to put minimal effort in because you're not being paid? Because
I mean, I think it's
part
hard.
of our job description and we get paid to do our job, so technically you're kind of being paid.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you a bit like of a better reputation as well. But I think it's hard because it says minimal effort. So it's not saying you're not doing it, but you're putting minimal effort in. And I do think, I'm not going to lie, I don't put all my effort and my 100% brain power into reviewing papers. Yeah, I used to. But I also think like the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I was about to say,
if you are the right reviewer for that paper, technically you shouldn't have to put too much effort into it anyway. So are we just again agreeing with this hot take?
I think minor revisions,
because it's like, you know, you definitely need to put some effort into it, because at the end of the day, like, this is part of our job description and we are responsible for making sure that the science and research that is in the literature is correct, accurate, and legit. And at the end of the day, that is part of our job description, especially if we expect other scientists to also do that for us. Although we're not being paid to do it, technically we are kind of paid to do it because it is part of our job. So minor revisions, I feel.
Yeah.
Listeners, you guys are going to have to let us know. What do you think? Are you in agreement, or do you think we are being delusional? Okay. Next one is kind of related, and this one for me is a hot take. It says, it's okay to be an author on papers you have not read. Nah.
Oh.
Straight up reject for me. A straight up reject. Straight up.
Yeah, because how are you putting your name to something that you don't know any? I mean, I know people who, like, their lab group are just pushing out papers and there's no way that they read that paper.
Yeah, this whole thing runs deep. This is a deep interconnected network of liars in academia, because I also know lab groups who they'll put each other's whole lab groups on their papers just so everyone is on more papers. I have had papers before, and I'm gonna give you some tea here. This is how passionate I am about this, because I had a paper that I wrote up and it went to preprint. So it went out as a preprint, and there's a bunch of people. Basically, I got sent like literally this Word document. Like, he couldn't even put it in an email. It had to come in a Word document. This is how many names were on it. And it was like, put all of these people on your paper. And I was like, okay, can you tell me like contributions? Because there was definitely some people who contributed and like I genuinely didn't know their contribution, because say, for example, I was using data that they had worked on and like they'd helped prepared. So yes, they deserve to go on my paper because they helped in that paper with preparation of data, right? Then there's some people and I'm like, this person, like, I don't know who this person is. They've had nothing to do, like, you're just putting them on just to arse lick them. Like, that's literally the only reason.
Oh my God, 100%.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
Be like, it'll be really good to have them on your paper. Like, they're a big name. Like, it'll get better reach. And I'm like, I don't care. They didn't do anything.
No, for real. And like, you're just trying to arse lick them. Like, I can see exactly what you're doing. Like, you want them to put you on theirs because they're a big name. Like, I can see exactly what you're doing, and you're using me in the process. So yeah,
this is a deep-rooted issue in academia, though.
It is. This is what I'm saying. So yeah, I was like asking for all their contributions, because sometimes when you submit a paper to a journal, you actually have to list all the authors separately and write what their contributions are. And like some of them you have to put like author contributions in your actual paper, like at the end. And then he just didn't reply to me. But anyway, that paper's still in preprint, because can't lie, I'm just like, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But anyway, no, it's not okay. It's not, because also, do you know what does bother me as well is, say I leave academia and I'm off doing something else, and then someone contacts someone on my paper and asks them something, and then they give them incorrect information because they weren't actually part of the paper. Then it's like, well, this is why you shouldn't be an author on it, you know?
Yeah. But I also don't know, I don't know if I could ever put my name to something that I've not read. I want to be reviewing that paper and making sure, also, one, I've contributed to it, and two, that I've actually seen what's been produced.
Yeah, 100%.
Otherwise, I don't want my name on it.
Because I'm also going to go as far as to say is like, just because you've read the paper, even if you've read the paper, it doesn't mean you should be on it. Like my lab group, we used to do, like when I was my PhD lab group, when someone in the lab would publish a paper, my PI would send it out to several people in the lab, and we would read over it and like act like a reviewer for them. And even then we wouldn't go on the paper, even if we had improved the paper in some way by suggesting something. He still wouldn't list us as an author. He would put us in the acknowledgements, like, thank you to so and so for so it's like, even reading it and offering suggestions, I'm sorry, but I don't necessarily think that always justifies being on the paper as an author.
Yeah.
So as a straight up reject for me. Sorry.
Reject.
Okay, next
Let us know what you think about that one, guys.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what people think of that one. I think most people will agree with us, but maybe they won't, because everybody's experiences are different. So yeah, we want to know. Okay, next one is, I love this one. If you ask more than 2 questions after a talk, you are doing it for attention.
Oh, I've got a lot to say about this. I feel like.
Go on.
I've gone to so many conferences before where, like, it's not been the best talk, and it's probably from a student, and it's been a little bit confusing. Like, you've got the general message, but like, it's not been the best talk. And you'll usually find there's someone in the audience, like a supervisor, PI or whatever, or professor or director of an institute or something, who's like Billy Big Bollocks. And
I was about to say, wants to throw their dick about.
Just wants to tear this student apart. And usually they'll do that in a way that they ask a question that's kind of not necessarily super hard, but they'll ask a question.
They know it's going to catch them out.
The student, will do their best in answering it, and say they don't answer it that well. Most people will just leave it there and just be like, look, they're probably not that confident about answering the questions. But it's the people who then follow up and be like, what do you mean? Or like, can you Yeah, and they ask follow-up questions, and I'm like, bro, read the room. Like, it's clear that they're not super confident, like, talking about this. Like, I'm happy to ask a question, but if they answer it and they haven't given me what I think a satisfactory answer, I'm not going to be like, but what about this?
Because
like,
also
I'm just going to leave
they know what the answer is, right? Like, it's not like you actually need to be told the answer. You obviously just want to hear it from them. So if you're not hearing it from them for the second time, just accept it, because you already know what the answer is. Sometimes I think follow-up questions are justifiable if there's a genuine curiosity or a genuine, like, you actually don't understand and like, oh, I still don't get this, and I actually don't know what the answer is. But I agree, it's when they know what the answer is, they just want to humiliate and embarrass that person, and it's like cuck behavior. I feel, I don't know why I'm relating this to being a cuck. but it's giving cuck behavior. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, like, if you are at a conference and you're like, you genuinely like kind of want to know the answer, that is a really good opportunity to be like, I would love to chat to you about this after the talk, blah, blah, blah. Because obviously they've got 5 minutes for questions. Give someone else the space,
right?
You know, like, and the floor to talk.
This is the other thing. Why are you taking up so much time to literally throw your dick about? Like, that's literally all you're doing. Like, there's other people in the room who have genuine questions and they're genuinely very curious, or they want clarification on certain things in the talk, and you're just taking it up to humiliate this person and humiliate yourself. Like, I don't understand. It's exactly that. Read the room. Do you not see that nobody in the room is impressed by you? Like, literally nobody. Like, we all just think you're being...
I think everyone just sees it as a bit of a dick move, to be honest.
100%. And that's why I'm saying it's giving cuck behavior.
Yeah. So I feel like, for me, this is a minor revisions, because it does depend on the context. If you're like genuinely really interested, fine. But like, typically... Correct.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, like, have I asked like more than 2 questions before? Yes, I have.
But have you asked that in a conference in front of a massive audience?
Yeah. But it was a genuine, like, I'm genuinely very, very curious. And like, it was like it came from a place of like, oh my God, like, your work is so exciting. Like, I have so many questions, and I could have asked 10, but I asked 2. Do you know what I mean? And then I'm like, okay,
and I also think when people ask 2 questions back to back, like in the same conversation, they're like, oh, I've honestly got 2 questions. The first one is this, and the second one is this. I think that's fine. Like, that's you just showing you're really interested. But yeah, I think it's when like they've clearly
also, if it's like
you
a really
unsatisfactory answer.
Yeah. And also, if it's a really niche talk, and sometimes you kind of can tell when nobody else in the room really has much else to say. So it's like, you kind of know sometimes that like your 2 questions are welcomed by everybody else in the room as well. So I agree, minor revisions, because there's some context where this is fine, I think. But if it's the cuck asking the questions, like, stop, sir. Literally stop. You're just annoying everybody. It also makes me feel really uncomfortable. Like, it makes me feel like I want to stick up for the person. Like, I want to stand up and be like, sit down. Like,
I'm
like, you want to help them answer the question.
Like, that's honestly why I hate it so much. I'm just like, oh, like, you're kind of like cringing internally because you're like, oh, that poor person.
100%. Okay, we've got one more hot take for this episode, kind of related. So I want to give it. This one says, conference poster sessions are academic speed dating. Disagree, mate. I've never... This is a straight up reject for me. First of all, there's not many good-looking people in academia. Sorry.
No, babes, there is. There's me and you. Look at us.
Oh, look at us. There's Pietra.
Kidding. What was I going to say?
I said there's Pietra.
I don't know how I feel about this.
My joke, Taz. I said Pietra. What? There's Pietra.
Oh my God, Pietro. He is hot. I don't know, because although I'm not involved in speed dating, I feel like
some people are.
Some senior members maybe are, you know?
I can't lie. There have been poster sessions where I do think, like, are you actually trying to flirt with me right now? Like, it's kind of like a minute into the conversation, you're literally thinking, like, I genuinely think you're trying to like hit on me right now, and I'm actually just trying to talk about science. I have had that like once or twice before where I'm like, can we not?
Yeah. Also, yeah, I know what you mean. It kind of feels, I feel like it feels really socially awkward because you'll be sat there, or you'll be stood there, and then people will come over and be like, so tell me about this. And I'm like,
Oh, I hate it.
oh, or they'll just be stood there looking at your poster and you'll be like, hi, do you want to know anything more? And it's like, I think it's so awkward. I'm usually about 4 glasses of wine deep at this point because
That's the best way to
hate the like social interaction otherwise. I'm usually like, because usually it's around the time when you're getting your free alcohol vouchers and I'm like, right, throw these back then I'll be more confident in talking to people when it's
I just refuse
to do awkward.
I just refuse to do posters. Like my supervisor like literally has said to me before, like, can you do a post? No yeah, minor revisions
for some people. I reckon maybe it is speed dating though.
Well, like I said, I definitely have sometimes, like, I've been midway through a conversation and I think to myself, you're not actually interested in this, are you? You just, because they just start making like odd comments and you're just like, what the
leave. No, like, but I've also had mates that are boys and they'll like be stood by their poster and the girl will come over and they'll be like, hey, I mean, what are you doing after this? Like, are you going out?
You going to the
so I actually do think it is kind of true. Just because
I agree, there are definitely some people who will take something like a post session as a speed dating. So
especially minor students, PhD students.
Yes, some people no. So
yeah, minor revisions, girl.
It's not even PhD students. I've definitely had a questionable PI discussion with a PI at a poster before, which is weird as hell.
Guys, I want to know what your thoughts on this are. Like, if you've been to a conference and you've been at a poster session, was it flirty? What vibe did you get? Like, or were there other people definitely flirting with each other? Because I've definitely seen it before.
And does anyone have a story? Like, because if you have a story, write in with a laboratory and we can actually do like a whole section on it, because I bet there's someone out there who has a really juicy story. So if that is you, don't forget you can head to our website at www.socultured.com, click the laboratory tab and you can enter your story in there anonymously. But for now, that rounds off today's episode. So thank you guys so much. We will be doing one more peer review take at the very end of the season in episode 10. So if you have any hot takes that you want to submit for that, make sure you follow us on Instagram, where you can just DM us them, or we'll be popping up a story soon where you can insert them. But yeah, that rounds off today's episode. So we will see you guys same time next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.